Morning, everybody. Today is Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yud Amud Beis, and then Kuf Yud Aleph, Meretz Hashem. So we'll begin from the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom, 110A3, bottom of the left column. The Kois Ikarin. So the Mishnah speaks about whether you're allowed to take a potion of sterility, which was to heal you, but also can cause a person to become sterile in the process. My Koisi Karn, what is this potion of sterility? Rabbi Yochanan says, Laisi Maskal Zuza Kaima Alexandria. You should bring a zuz weight of Alexandrian gum, which is a sap from the trees in Alexandria, Rashi says. Umaskal Zuza Gavya Gila, and a zuz weight of alum. Umaskal Zuza Kurkuma Rishka, and a zuz weight of garden saffron. You should grind them together. Sid, I want to tell you also, Sid, if we're not coming across clear, there's another option is you can call into the call. Are you getting it? Is this clear? Do you want to call in? What?
Clear.
No, this is okay so far.
Okay, just for everybody to be aware, if you're ever having video issues, there's a phone number you can call in. So audio is often clearer than video. So just want you to be aware of that. Okay, so you do this concoction, lezava. Now, if you want to use this concoction to heal a zava, which is a woman who's having an abnormal flow of blood. Remember we discussed in Nida about the 7-11 cycle, where of course the chain of 7-Elevens named it after the women's cycle.
Yes.
So there are 7 days where it's normal for her to get her flow, and then there's 11 days which makes her a zava. So women, if they want to prevent becoming a zava, you can drink this concoction. Zava for healing a zava, tulasa b'chamra. So you should have all these 3 ingredients we just said mixed with wine. V'loy mi'akra, it will not cause her to become sterile and to become unable to have children. Le'yer kona, if you want to use concoction to heal jaundice, Shrein b'shichra, you should have 2 of these ingredients. Seemingly means any of these 2 of these 3 ingredients, or it means the number of cups that you take, which means a zava should take 3 cups and a person from jaundice takes 2 cups. Shrein b'shichra, you take 2 of these mixed with beer, umi'akar, and it will cause him to become sterile. He will not be able to have children after he does that. Now, l'zava tlasa b'chamra v'lo mi'akra. Zava, a woman who's having this abnormal flow of blood, she should have all 3 ingredients mixed with wine. It will not make her sterile. Let's say she's not able to do this or it doesn't work. Laisi talasa kefize shamki parsai. You should bring 3 kefize, which is a vessel that holds 3 lugin, Rashi says. Shamki parsai is 3 kefize of Persian onions, which are very large, Rashi says. V'nishloik b'chamra, boil them in wine. V'nashkia, and give the potion to the zava to drink. V'neimala, and say to her, kum mizovech, stop your flow. We find by a lot of these potions that saying things works together with it. Now, I don't know if it's on a physical level. We have seen that there is a concept that speaking does affect things. We've said speaking to herbs when you're grinding them makes them better. Or I don't know if it's some Kabbalistic potion that we're doing. Again, we saw yesterday that Hashem invested certain powers into herbs. So I don't know what level it's on, but this is what you have to do. V'ilai, and if that doesn't work, either it's impractical or ineffective, Rashi says. Loisva parashas drachim. You should sit this woman down at the crossroads. V'linkita kasa dechamra biyada, and have her hold a cup of wine in her hand. Somebody should come from behind her, and scare her. And say to her, stop your flow, and that will help her. And if that doesn't work, you should bring a fistful of cumin, ubuna de mairika, and a fistful of saffron, ubuna de shavlilasa, and a fistful of fenugreek. V'nishlik b'chamra, boil them in wine. V'nashkia, give it to the zava to drink. V'neimala, and say to her, kumizavech, stop your flow. V'ilai, and if that doesn't work or that's not practical, laisi shitin shi didana, you should bring 60 clay seals of a barrel, v'lishpiyah, and smear them on her. V'leimala, and say to her, kumizavech. Rashi says after you soak them in water, you can smear them on her after it softens. And again, say to her, stop your flow. And if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Laisi pashtina, you should bring a pashtina. which is an herb that does not grow upwards, but it spreads over the ground, Rashi says. V'lish like b'chamra, boil it in wine. V'lish b'ya, smear it on her. V'nemela, and say to her, kum zavech, stop your flow. V'ilai, and if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Laisi charnuga dehigsa rumisa. Bring charnuga, which is an herb that grows near thorn bushes, Rashi says, of rumisa bush, which is the name of a thorn bush, Rashi says. V'likli, burn it, v'lispa b'shachake dechitana b'kaita, and take its ashes in linen rags in the summer, v'shachake da'amar gufna b'sisva, or in cotton rags in the winter. And then it seems like these rags should be worn by the zava. V'ilai, and if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Lichri shava biri, dig 7 holes. V'likli b'hu shabishta yalda de orla, burn a branch of young orla vine. Orla we know is a tree in the first 3 years. So burn a branch of a young orla vine in each of these 7 holes. V'linkita kasa dechamra biyad, and then you should have her hold a cup of wine in her hand. V'lukma meha, stand her up from one hole. V'loisva aha, and then sit her over another hole. V'lukma meha, and then stand her up from that hole. V'lusva aha, and then sit her over another hole. V'akol chad v'chada, and each time she stands up, leimala, say to her, b'kum zavech, stop your flow. V'ilai, and if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Laisi smida, bring fine flour. Veliska mipalga litatois, smear it over the lower half of her body. Belemala, and say to her, kum zavech, stop your flow. Vilai, and if that doesn't work or that's not practical, laisi biasa dinamisa, bring an ostrich egg. Velikli, and burn it. Velispa b'shachake dechikana b'kaita, and take the ashes in linen rags in the summer. V'shachake da'amar gufna b'sisva, or in cotton rags in the winter, and seemingly again she wears them. Vilai, and if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Liftach lachavisa decham lishmam, open a barrel of wine for her sake. Rashi says means she should drink large amounts of wine on a constant basis. Ve'ilai, not that we recommend people drink that much. Ve'ilai, and if not, linkit sa'arta demishtachachas bekfusa de kudna chivaram. Take a barley grain that was found in the dung of a white mule. Inakta chad yoma, if she holds it for 1 day in her hand, Pascha treyomi, her flow will stop for 2 days. V'inakta treyomi, if she holds it for 2 days, Pascha tlasiomi, the flow will stop for 3 days. V'inakta tlasiomi, and if she holds it for 3 days, Pascha lo'olam, the flow will stop forever. Okay, so we have all these different remedies to help out a woman who's having this abnormal zava flow. All right, let's continue onward now. So the Mishnah said, Liyarkona, Shreb b'shichra miakar. For healing jaundice, the potion should be 2 of these 3 ingredients between the Alexandrian sap, the alum, and saffron, mixed with beer, and it'll make her sterile. V'iloi, and if that doesn't work or that's not practical, laisi reisha dishibuta demilcha, take the head of a salted shibuta. Shibuta was a species of fish, Rashi says. V'lish like b'shechra, boil it in beer, v'lish, and she should drink it. V'iloi, and if that's not practical, laisi monine dekamti, bring juice of locust juice. V'ileka monina dekamti, and if there's no juice of locusts, laisi monine de nekire, bring juice of nekire, which is a type of small bird, Rashi says. V'li'ayli lebebanim, then take the patient into a bathhouse, v'lish b'yeh, and smear the juice on this person who has jaundice. V'ileka bebani, if you don't have a bathhouse available, lukme ben tanur laguda, stand them between an oven and a wall, which is the heat of that place will make him perspire, and the disease will leave his body together with the perspiration, Rashi says, and smear the juice on him there. Amr Yochanan said, one who wants to warm the patient, so he'll perspire and helps heal him from jaundice, should wrap him well in his sheet. Or either means the patient's sheet, or Rashi says it means a sheet of someone else who was also suffering from jaundice. Rav Acha bar Yosef Chashbei, Rav Acha bar Yosef suffered from jaundice. Ava later Rav Kahana, Vitase. Rav Kahana did the above treatment, which he wrapped him in the sheet, Rashi says, Vitase, and he was cured. The Eloi, and if that's not practical, Laisi Tzlasa Kafizi Tamri Parsiyasam, bring 3 kafizi, which is a vessel holds 3 lugs, Rashi told us, of Persian dates. We're on 110b2. Utzlasa kafizi de kira dinish terufe, and 3 kafizi of wax that had dripped from an overflowing honeycomb. Utzlasa kafizi ahala toilana, and 3 kafizi of red aloe. Velishla kinu bishichra, boil them in beer. Velishti, and patients should drink the potion. Vilai, and if that's not practical, that doesn't work. Laisi ila bar chamar, bring a foal of a donkey, v'legalach mitziasa duration, shave the middle of the patient's head, v'lishbik le demame apuse, and draw blood from the foal's forehead, v'loisveya reishe, and put the blood on the shaved part of the patient's head, v'lizar me'ene deloy l'sami lihu, but take care of his eyes, which means make sure, Rashi says, that no blood of the foal enters the patient's eyes, because so that shouldn't blind him. V'ilay, and if that's not practical, laisi reisha de barucha de manach bekivsham, bring a ram's head that had been pickled. Vinegar or brine, Rashi says, v'lish like b'shichra, boil it in beer. So bring a ram's head that has been pickled, v'lish like b'shichra, boil it in beer, v'lishte, and the patient should drink the brew. V'ilay, if that doesn't work, laisi davar achar chutranam, bring something else that is speckled. Now, something else is referring to a chazer, referring to a pig. So you bring a speckled pig, v'likre, tear it open, v'loisve alibe, and put it on the patient's heart. V'ilai, and if not, laisi karti mikavtuta demeshri, bring leeks from the middle of the row. Rashi says they're the sharpest, and the patient should eat those leeks, and that will help cure him from the jaundice. Ahu Taya de Chashbe, there was an Arab who was suffering from jaundice. Amrle Lekinai, he said to a gardener, Shekol Glimai, take my cloak as payment, Vahavli Meishra de Karti, and give me a row of leeks so he could eat them and heal himself. Yavle, the gardener gave him a row of leeks, Vachal, and he ate it. Amrle, the Arab then said to the gardener, Oishlan Glimach, lend me your cloak, which is the cloak that I gave his payment. Vegani Bey Kali, and I'll sleep on it a little bit. Ikarech Gana Bey, he wrapped himself in the cloak and slept in it. Kari Chamim V'kam, when he became hot and got up, Nafal Purta Mene, the cloak fell away from him in pieces, which means the burning effect of the disease that came out with his perspiration, so it actually destroyed the cloak. This sounds similar to kind of concept like sweating through a fever type of thing. Okay. So we said liyarkona train b'shechor miyakar for healing jaundice. It should be 2 of the 3 ingredients, which is Alexandrian sap, alum, and saffron mixed with beer, and that will heal him from the jaundice, but it will also make him unable to have children. It will make him sterile. And this is going to be the big discussion coming up. Are you allowed to take a medicine or do something that will make a person unable to have children, to make them sterile? Is that permitted or not? Because it sounds from the Mishnah that this is the way you heal jaundice. But the question is that permitted or not? Fraktimar mishari, is that okay? Vahatani, we learned in a brayso, minayin l'seres ba'adam shu'aser. How do you know you're not allowed to castrate a person? Tamalar, the pasuk va'arsechem loisasu, and in your land you shall not do this, which is, it says you're not allowed to bring in the animal as an offering that was castrated, and you're not allowed to do it. So there's a prohibition of doing this. B'chem lo asu, it should not be. Now, why did it say in your land? This is not a land-based mitzvah. So there's no reason to say land, but rather it's teaching us, b'chem lo asu, should not be done to you, even people. So not just animals, but even people, it's prohibited to do something that will make them sterile. These are words of Chanina. So why it is okay to drink this potion to heal the jaundice? It's going to make the person sterile. The Gemara says, "Hani milihecha de kamechavin." That's only if his intent is to cause, the intent of the action is to cause the sterility or the castration. Over here, it's very different. When he drinks the potion, his intent is not to make himself sterile. The intent is to heal himself from jaundice. It's just a side effect that it makes him sterile. That's not the prohibition. So the prohibition is doing, and they say it's not necessarily the intent, but what is this action you're doing? If the action is an action that makes a person sterile, that's forbidden. If the action is that he's healing himself from jaundice, but it happens to be a side effect that it makes him sterile, that's not the prohibition. The Rabbi Yochanan, and we see this because Rabbi Yochanan said, a right say she saris tarnagol, if somebody wants to castrate a rooster, yital karbalasai, should remove its crest, umistaris me'olav, it will become castrated on its own accord. It will not be able to have procreate further. So we see if Rabbi Yochanan is saying this, obviously indirect castration is not the prohibition. So too regarding a person taking a medicine, if it's indirect causing sterility, that's not the prohibition. There's no proof from the case of the rooster. Ravashi said, Remus ruchu de nikita le. The rooster is seized by arrogance when it has its crest. When you remove its pride, it grieves over the loss and it refrains from copulation. So if so, it's not a form of castration at all. It just happens to be you're making the rooster depressed because it lost its arrogance, and that's why it's not going to have further children. If so, you have no proof from here that indirect castration is okay. So again, the question is, why would it be okay for this person to drink this drink of sterility to heal jaundice? If at the end of the day, it's going to cause them to be sterile, and we have no proof that indirect castration is okay at this point. Allah basris. Rather, we're talking about a person who was already castrated. So that person, Rashi's saying, can drink this potion because he's already sterile. So then there's no more damage done. So he can use this to drink it to heal from jaundice. Okay, and this is going to be the question now. If you have something that was prohibited, but it was done already, is there a prohibition in adding on to that or not? So there's a prohibition to castrate a person, but let's say he's already castrated. Is there a prohibition to do it again? That's going to be the question.
How can you do it again?
So you do something so over here, this person's already castrated, but he drinks a potion. Well, we'll see. You could do different elements here. So like this person has some issue why he can't procreate, but now he's drinking a potion that also caused him to be sterile. That cause also like further castrating him. That's the question. Yeah. We're now in 111A1. Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the top. So like this. So we know that there's a biblical prohibition of creating a blemish in an offering. Let's say your offering is blemished already. Is there a biblical prohibition to put a second blemish in it? So,
Isn't that hectish already?
okay, so it's hectish already. So,
Unless you sell it.
okay, but this prohibition, but the prohibition of putting a blemish in, which you're not allowed to put a blemish in an offering, does that apply to a blemished offering, or is that only to an unblemished offering? So once it's blemished already, is there a prohibition to further blemish it? So that's actually a machlokas in Bechoros. I don't know if initially you're allowed to do it, but there's machlokas whether there's a liability for blemishing a blemished animal, okay? Now, there's another prohibition that you're not allowed to, most of the baked offerings in the Beis Hamikdash were not chametz. They're not allowed to be leavened. Pasuk says, lo se'afa chametz, lo se'asa chametz. You're not allowed to bake or make most of the baked offerings into leavening. It has to be matzah, unleavened. So let's just say somebody already did one step in the process of leavening it. Is there a prohibition if you do a second step of leavening it? So like this. This is what we're going to be discussing now. Hakol maidim. So everybody agrees. If somebody processes a leavened mincha after another person already processed that leavened mincha, shuchayev, he'd be liable. For example, let's say one person kneaded it in a leavened state, and then another person shapes the dough, and somebody else puts it in the oven. So 3 people are doing different processes in it while it's leavened. Everybody agrees, shuchayev, that there would be liability to each one of them. Even though there's a machlokas in Bechoros regarding blemishing an already blemished animal, but there's still, everybody agreed by leavening something that's already partially leavened would be liable. Yes, Steve?
Is parenthetically, what happens to the matzah that's no longer matzah that was leavened? Is it nifso and you throw it out, do you burn it, or you continue bringing it?
I don't know. Good question. I would say, yeah, I'm sure you can't eat it. The question is if you burn it or if you just let it rot. Those are the 2 options I can't think of. It's kachim, so I can't think of any other option other than either you let it rot or you burn it.
But you wouldn't continue the process.
What?
But you wouldn't continue the process to bring it.
Correct. You're not allowed to do any step in the process of a leavened mincha.
Okay.
Gil had a question. Gil, let's try your phone thing. 1 second. Gil's going to talk on his phone. Let's see if this works.
Is redeeming an option?
What, Gil?
Is redeeming an option? We played the mice, not the mice, the hectish.
The animal that got blemished? This is not going to work. Forget it.
Is your phone all the way up? Is your phone
We get echoes every time I respond back to him.
Oh, that's why I said you have to put yours on mute.
It is muted. No, but I still hear it through my screen and I hear it through his phone. Gil, try it one time.
I see what you're saying.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. There's a double echo because I'm hearing it through my phone and I'm hearing it through my screen, which means you're all, yeah, there's an echo going on over here.
Okay.
All right, I'll try for now. We're gonna hang up, we'll try for repeating it. All right, one more time. Gil wanted to know, what do you want to know, Gil? Are you talking about, Gil wants to know if you could redeem it to money. Are you talking about the chametz or are you talking about the blemished animal? The blemished animal, so that's the case of Psule HaMikdashin. So if you can redeem it, Psule HaMikdashin was case of animals that got blemished. There are rules to what you can do with them. If the blemish preceded, we saw this in Zvachim, I guess, if the blemish preceded the sanctification, then it only had monetary sanctity, you can fully redeem it. If you sanctified it and then it got a blemish, so that's Psule HaMikdashin, which you can redeem it. It still retains some elements of sanctity and some elements are not sanctified. Okay, so again, so to blemish an already blemished animal is machlokas and bechoros, if that has liability or not. To continue further baking or processing an already leavened baked offering, a mincha offering, everybody agrees you are liable. Like this, hakol moedim. So again, start back to the top. Hakol moedim, everybody agrees. The mechametz achar mechametz. If somebody processes 11 mincha after somebody else has already done another step of processing, a shuchayev, each one is liable. Shenamar is written because we have different prohibitions. Lo se afa chametz, it should not be baked leaven. Lo se asa chametz, and it should not be prepared leavened. Okay, how about castrating somebody who's already castrated? And there's different ways how you can do it. Well, we'll see about the mesaris acha mesaris. Castrating somebody who's already been castrated, shuchayev, you would be liable even for the second act. Why? Shenamar is written, uma'uch v'chasus v'nasuk v'charos. The Torah says, somebody whose testicles are squeezed, crushed, detached, or cut, you shall not do this. So there's different elements here. In Malkaras Chayiv, if you're liable for their being cut, al nasik l'koshken, for sure, if they're detached. Why did you have to add detached? To teach us, even furthering the process of detaching after somebody else has cut them, Shu Chayiv is liable. So we see further castrating is liable. So if a person is castrated and then they drink a potion that makes them completely sterile, that should be liable. So we're back to our question, how does the Mishnah allow you to drink this potion for jaundice that causes sterility? Forget about Shabbos issues. There should be an issue of causing sterility. Ve'ela bezakein. So the Gemara says, you know what? Okay, so we're talking about somebody who's too old that they're not able to have children anymore. So causing sterility in them doesn't do anything. So maybe that's the case. So they're allowed to drink it for jaundice. Frakta Gemara, hold on. But we see even elderly people can get back to their days of youth. V'ha'am Rabbi Yochanan said, Hein hachziruni l'narus. Rabbi Yochanan said, this treatment returned me to my potency of my youth, which means the Gemara in Gittin talks about a cure. How a person get back to their potency. And Rabbi Yochanan said that it was even effective for him in his old age. So we see even an elderly person can get back there. So again, so who would be allowed to drink this potion? Ella be'isha. Rather, we're talking about, maybe we're talking about a woman. The whole prohibition doesn't apply to a woman, which is a separate machlokas. Is there a prohibition of castration when it comes to a woman? So there's a machlokas about this of Tanaim, and also women don't have the obligation of be fruitful and multiply, pruvu. It's actually a big machlokas. The Rambam says somebody who castrates a woman is not liable to malchus, which implies it is still forbidden. Others say it is actually permitted. So the Gemara wants to say, or it could be direct castration on a woman is forbidden, but it could be indirect castration, like the case of drinking a potion is permitted. So that's the Gemara say we're talking about a woman. Now, this only works out if a woman is not obligated in being fruitful and multiplying. Pruvu. According to Rabbi Yochanan Broka that said, Al shneim hu omer. Regarding both Adam and Chava, the pasuk says, Vayivarach Osam Elokim, and Hashem blessed them, Vayirma Lahem Elokim Pruvu. And Hashem said to both of them, you should be fruitful and multiply. So again, we paskin the mitzvah Pruvu is only on the man, not on the woman. But if you hold it's on the woman as well, so then there's a separate issue of drinking this potion of sterility because it's going to negate her mitzvah Pruvu. Michael, remember what does it say? The Gemara says, Bizakena, we're talking about an elderly woman who is not able to bear children anymore. Therefore, Pruvu would not apply anyways to her because she's not possible. Inami Bakara, we're also talking about a barren woman, which she's not able to have children. So for her, you don't have this prohibition. So that's the Mishnah saying that she can use this to heal jaundice.
You know, the woman takes it, kind of taking herself out of being pregnant with that, like that sister. I mean, like, she could get married, she could have children.
Gil wants to know, by a woman, there still should be a prohibition of making herself incapable of having children. Are you asking?
Right, because you're not letting the man, there's a potential man for you out.
Because she's preventing a man from having children. Yeah, but that's not her mitzvah. It's a man's mitzvah. So meaning Gil wants to know what is our, meaning our Gemara comes out that the machlokas if a woman has a mitzvah peruvu. If the woman does not have a mitzvah, so according to Rabbi Yochanan Broga, the mitzvah has, that the woman has a mitzvah peruvu, then the only way she could drink this potion of sterility is if she's elderly or if she's a barren woman that's not capable. But we pass and a woman does not obligate in peruvu, so the Gemara is saying that she's okay. She's allowed to drink this potion to heal her from jaundice. Gil wants to know, but still, she should not drink it so she can enable a man to fulfill his mitzvah peruvu. Okay, but that's not necessarily her obligation. Okay, they talk about the Yaivitz asked that based on the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan said that these potions in Gittin brought him back to his youth. So why was when Sarah first heard that Avram, that they were going to have a child, she said, my husband is too old. Didn't she know the Gemara in Gittin that says that there are certain potions that can bring you back to your days of youth? So the Yaivitz and others, obviously she came way before the Gemara, but they talk about if these were real potions that were around, what was her question at all? Okay. Yes, Michael. So what's the question? So Michael wants to know, since we know that we believe in miracles, so even if a person's not able to have children, miraculously they could have children, so then you shouldn't be allowed to drink the potion of sterility because that will make it really you can't have children. One second. I don't think we're talking about saving your life here. Because if we're talking about saving your life, of course you're allowed to do something that makes you sterile. There's no question. So either this jaundice is not life-threatening, or we said there are a bunch of other options you can do to heal from jaundice. So I don't think we're talking about to save your life. That would be a non-question. Michael wants to know what about miracles? But Michael, I think your question is your answer. I mean, within the frame of nature, this person's sterile already, right? So you're saying a miracle can make it happen, right? Well, a miracle could probably make it happen if you drink the potion of sterility also, right? I don't think we have to work within yes, we believe in miracles, but we have to work in the framework of nature. Okay, new Mishnah. We're on 11182, Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the new Mishnah. Hachoishesh b'shina, somebody who has a toothache, pain in his teeth. Lo yigamea b'hanas hachometz, he is not allowed to sip vinegar through his teeth to try to heal that pain. Again, there's a rabbinic decree of tochen, you might come to grind herbs and spices if we allow you to do certain medicines. Now, again, we're not talking about if there's a life-threatening situation, and usually we will also be permissible to take medicine if it's something that's called a choli kol gufa, which means either makes you to a point where you have to go to bed because of it, or it's really ails your whole body. Those usually were generally permissible to take medication. But if it's less than that, that's where we're talking about like a toothache, a headache, where it's not making him confined to bed or hurting his whole body. So then you're not rabbinically, you're not allowed to take that on Shabbos. Again, before discontinuing any medication, consult with a rabbi, because most medication that's prescribed by a doctor will be allowed to be taken. Definitely antibiotics are allowed to be taken on Shabbos because those affect your whole body. So if anybody has medication they're not sure about taking on Shabbos, do not discontinue before speaking with a rabbi. So just consult with a rabbi first, because many medications prescribed by doctors will be allowed to be taken on Shabbos. Somebody has pain in his teeth. Should not sip vinegar through his teeth, because that is a way of strengthening the gums, the Rambam says. And since healthy people don't generally sip vinegar, this looks like you're doing it for medicinal purposes. However, he's allowed to dip his food in vinegar in the usual manner, and if he gets cured, he gets cured. So again, if you're doing something that's noticeable, that's for therapeutic value, that's prohibited. But so you're allowed to be clever and say, okay, I know that vinegar will strengthen my gums. I'm going to dip my bread in vinegar, which is a normal thing to do, and that will help my gums. That's okay. As opposed to just sipping vinegar, which is not a normal thing for healthy people to do. That's not okay. Okay, if it gets cured, it gets cured. Somebody who feels pain in his loins may not smear them with wine or vinegar. However, he is allowed to smear them with oil, because even healthy people anoint themselves with oil. Now, if we're talking about a solid, there's a separate issue of mimareach on Shabbos, of smoothing out a solid, but a liquid smoothing is not a problem. The only issue would be the healing. So something that even healthy people do would be okay. Just to record also, we're not talking about smearing onto clothing. We're talking about smearing specifically on your body. There's other issues if you smear onto garments. It can be issue of molid reach. If it smells, you're not allowed to put a smell into garments. So we're talking about smearing it onto your body. If it's something that healthy people do and it's a liquid, it would be okay. Below sham and vered, but you're not allowed to smear rose oil on, because rose oil, which is oil that roses have been boiled for many days in the sun, the Ran says, that was rare and expensive, Rashi says, and people only did that for therapeutic benefits. Princes may smear rose oil on their wounds, because for princes, that was normal to smear rose oil on the bodies even on the weekdays. So for them, it does not look like you're doing anything that's medicinal. Rabbi Shimon says, Kol Yisrael b'nei malachim. He says, all the Jewish people are viewed like princes, and therefore, if a prince can do it, any Jewish person has a status of a child of a king, and therefore, we would all be allowed to do that. And basically, he's saying that the halacha doesn't discriminate between different groups. So if one group is allowed to do it, then the other group is allowed to do it as well. Okay. Ramile, Zakta Gemara, Ramile Rav Acha Aricha, Dehu Rav Acha Bar Papa, the tall Rav Acha, that was his nickname, who is Rav Acha Bar Papa, he posed this contradiction to Ravo. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, somebody who feels pain in his teeth, it's not allowed to sip vinegar. Does that imply, remember, these are only forbidden if they have therapeutic benefit. If vinegar actually does not help out your teeth at all, then it would be okay, because then you're not doing anything that has medicinal value. So our mission implies that vinegar is good to strengthen your teeth or your gums. Remember, but it's written in a pasuk in Mishlei, written by Shlomo Malach, like vinegar to the teeth and like smoke to the eyes, so is a lazy person to those who send him. Just like vinegar damages the teeth and smoke damages the eyes, a lazy person causes damage to somebody who sends him to do a mission because he's not going to end up fulfilling it. So we see clearly from the pasuk in Mishlei that vinegar is bad for the teeth, not good for the teeth. So the Gemara says, Lokash, it's not a question. Ha b'kiyua depri. The pasuk, which says that vinegar is bad to the teeth, is talking about to the acrid juice of unripe fruit. Basically, the juice of immature grapes is harmful to the teeth, Rashi says, and that's like vinegar because it's an acrid product of a grape. As opposed to Amish is referring to regular vinegar, which is good for the teeth. It strengthens the gums. I'll give you another answer. Both the pasuk and the Mishnah are talking about vinegar. However, it depends. The Mishnah is talking about where there's a wound. If there's a wound, the vinegar helps out the wound. As opposed to if there's no wound, it's actually bad for your teeth to have vinegar. When there's a wound, the vinegar heals the teeth. When there's no wound, the vinegar actually loosens the teeth and it's bad for them. So basically, Rashi says it shrinks the gums. So if there's a wound, it shrinks the wound, that makes it better. If there's no wound, it just shrinks the gums and makes it worse. Okay, lo yigamea behanas achometz. Somebody has pain in his teeth may not sip vinegar through them. Frakti Gemara v'hatanya, but we learned in a brisa lo yigamea upolet. One may not sip vinegar to relieve a toothache and then spit it out, because if you're sipping it and then spitting it out, that's clear you're doing it for therapeutic purposes. But if you want to sip it and swallow it, that doesn't look like therapeutic. That looks like you just want to sip some vinegar. You're just in the mood for taking, guys don't do that. You don't take a sip of vinegar some days. So we have a contradiction right now that our Mishnah says you're not allowed to sip vinegar, period. But the Brisa says it depends. To sip the vinegar and spit it out, that it shows like you're doing it for therapeutic purposes. That's what's forbidden. But to sip it and swallow it is okay. That just looks like you're sipping vinegar. Amar Abai said, you're right. We have to qualify our Mishnah. When the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to sip vinegar, it actually means to sip it and spit it out. But to sip it and swallow it would be okay, because it just looks like you're in the mood of sipping vinegar, not for therapeutic value, so that would be okay. Okay, that's one way to reconcile the contradiction between the Brisa and the Mishnah. We're now in 111A3, 2/3 of the way down, Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Rava said, you can even say our Mishnah is talking about sipping and swallowing would be prohibited. However, it depends, is it before the meal or after the meal? Kan lifnei tibul. The Brisa, which it says that sipping and swallowing was okay, is talking about before you dip, which means before the meal. By the meal, you dip your food into vinegar. That's called before the meal. Kan la'achar tibul, as opposed to Mishnah is talking about you're doing it after the meal. So basically, if you swallow vinegar before a meal, it's not clear that it's doing for therapeutic purposes. It looks like he's just beginning his meal. So that would be, if you're going to sip vinegar and swallow it, there it depends. If it's before the meal, it just looks like you're starting a meal. That's okay. And that's the Brisa. As opposed to the Mishnah is talking about after a meal, it's abnormal. Nobody's sipping vinegar after a meal unless he's doing it for therapeutic purposes. Okay, so that's another way to Rava to work it out. Fragma v'nema midalifnei tibul shari. So it comes out according to Rava, sipping vinegar and swallowing before a meal is okay. Sipping vinegar and swallowing after a meal is not okay. Now this raises a very interesting question. Should we say that since this action is permitted before the meal, maybe the same action should be forbidden after the meal? Do we make such distinctions? If this action is permitted, are we really going to say it makes a distinction if it was before or after the meal? The nema, but maybe we should say, midalifnei tibul shari. Once we're saying that before the meal it's permitted to sip and swallow vinegar, the achar tibul nami shari, we should say even after dipping the meal, it should be permitted. One second, Gary, just give me a minute, okay? Don't want to lose a train of thought. The Shamina Leila Rava de Islay Hoyel, because we know Rava holds of the concept of whole of since, which is since one thing is permitted, we allow it in another situation as well. The Amar Rava, because Rava said, Laka midi de b'Shabbos shari uviyoma kippur master. Rava says there's nothing that on Shabbos would be permitted. Now, Shabbos is more stringent regarding malachas than Yom Kippur. So Rava says there's nothing that on Shabbos would be permitted and Yom Kippur forbidden. So since we say something is permitted on Shabbos, Yom Kippur Nami should be permitted on Yom Kippur as well. Now, this is talking about going to the mikvah on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. So the Gemara in Beya says, even if you're not allowed to go bathing on Shabbos, you are allowed to go to the mikvah on Shabbos. Because it doesn't look like you're, now there's a separate issue. What would be the issue? Maybe it looks like you're doing tikkun mana because you're rectifying yourself. Because when you go to the mikvah, you're purifying yourself. Maybe just like you're not allowed to tithe your produce on Shabbos, because it looks like you're rectifying it. Maybe you should not be allowed to go to the mikvah on Shabbos because it rectifies. It's tikkun mana. It's like the final hand blow, rectifying yourself. So the Gemara in Beya says you're allowed to do that because so it doesn't look like necessarily you're rectifying yourself because maybe you're just bathing. So that's why it's okay. Now the question is, should we allow you to go to mikvah on Yom Kippur or not? Where on Yom Kippur we know that bathing for pleasure is not permitted. So meaning, again, if you go to the mikvah to purify yourself, the issue is it looks like tikkun mana. It looks like you're rectifying, doing like a status change in yourself, which is like the final hammer blow. On Shabbos it's okay, because it just looks like you're bathing. But the problem is Yom Kippur, you don't have that. You can't say it looks like you're bathing because you're not allowed to bathe on Yom Kippur. But Rava says, well, once we're going to allow you to go to the mikvah to purify yourself on Shabbos, we'll allow you to do it on Yom Kippur as well. So we see that Rava has this concept that if it's permitted one case, we allow it to another case. So Rava himself should say, if taking a sip of vinegar and swallowing is permitted before a meal, we should say it's permitted after a meal as well. That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara says, Hadar be Rava mehach. Rava retracted from that concept of sins, which is that, so that answer where he reconciled the rulings regarding sipping vinegar before and after the meal, he actually would retract from what he said. And he would have to go like Abaye's reason that the difference will be between swallowing and spitting out or swallowing. So you're right, Rava would retract from that ruling that it makes a difference between before and after the meal, because if we would allow it before the meal, we would have to allow it after the meal as well. So Gemara says, how do you know he retracted from that ruling regarding sipping the vinegar? Maybe he retracted from the ruling of going to mikvah on Yom Kippur. Maybe that was a sin he retracted from. No, don't think that Rava retracted that statement regarding immersing on Yom Kippur. The Tanya, as we learned, because we learned in the Brayso. So, Kol Chayvet Tefillah is Tovlin Kedark, and all those who need to immerse themselves are allowed to immerse in the normal manner. Bein b'Tisha B'Av, Bein b'Yom Kippur, and both on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. So we see definitely we do apply the concept of sins, and we do allow you to go to mikvah if necessary on Yom Kippur. Yes, Gary has a question. Yes.
Wrong
What?
about being able to bathe or the can on Shabbos, so you have to be wrong about the vinegar.
Gary's asking if he's wrong regarding Kippur, he's wrong regarding the vinegar. So the Gemara is concluding that Rava does subscribe to the concept of sins, that since it's permitted on Shabbos, it would be permitted on Yom Kippur. That doesn't mean everything that's permitted on Shabbos is permitted on Yom Kippur. Obviously, you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur, but if you're allowed to go to mikvah on Shabbos, you are allowed to go to mikvah for mitzvah on Yom Kippur. So Rava has a concept of sins. And you're right, when it comes to vinegar, he retracted, and he does not say a distinction between before and after the meal. Rather, the distinction will be like Abaye said originally, that to sip and swallow would be okay, but to sip and spit out would not be okay. All right?
Which is reason.
Because if you sip and swallow, Gary wants to know what the distinction is. If you sip and swallow, so then it looks like you're just sipping vinegar. It doesn't show that you're doing it for medicine. If you sip and spit out, it's clear you're doing it for medicinal purposes, because why else are you spitting it out?
They say vinegar is good for your digestive system, but it's before or after the meal.
Gary's asking that vinegar is good for your digestive system. Right, but if you're sipping and spitting out, it's clear you're doing it just to strengthen your teeth, which is a problem. If you're sipping and swallowing, that's okay. Okay?
How come we don't bring a case of sleep though? I mean, I can tell us still on Shabbos because it's sleep.
To do what?
Are you not allowed so much Shabbos because it's sleep though?
So Gil's asking that, so you said, Gil, are you asking that you should not be able to go to the mikvah?
Right. Why would you use that same rule by the
So Gil's asking that you should not be allowed to go to the mikvah because you might come to squeeze out the water. The answer is that when you go to the mikvah, you have to be careful in that, but that wasn't the reason why it was originally forbidden. We had a few different reasons. We had a whole evolution to the prohibition of dipping and swimming. It started off, a big part of it was the fact that the bathhouse attendants were heating up the bathhouses with hot water and saying that they heat up before water. That was part of the evolution. So therefore they said no more bathhouses. There's an issue of swimming because you might come to make like a boat or cut off branches. The squeezing, we don't find that that was a reason to prohibit swimming, but rather we prohibited swimming or dipping for other purposes. But we said once you're doing it, obviously you have to make sure that you don't squeeze out the water from your towel or from your hair. So going to a mikvah on Shabbos, there are those who do it. There are in practice. There are those who go to the mikvah. Definitely women Friday nights, if their night of tefillah falls out, then it absolutely is permitted for them to go. And we just say, be careful not to squeeze out any water from your hair or from your towel. Some men who go to the mikvah every day will go every Shabbos morning as well. So that wasn't we don't find a rabbinic prohibition. They said, don't get wet because you might come to squeeze out. If you do that, you shouldn't be allowed to walk outside in the rain. You're allowed to walk outside in the rain. Rather, they say, if you're wet, make sure you don't squeeze it out. Okay? Okay, let's continue onward. 111A3, bottom of the right column. We're at the 2 dots, the bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Somebody else feels pain in his loins. So we had a machlokas in the Mishnah, what you're allowed to smear on, where Reb Shimon says even an ordinary person, not a prince, can smear rose oil on his wounds, and the Tanna Kama says only a prince could do it, right? So Amar Rav Abba bar Zavda, Amar Rav Abba bar Zavda said name Rav, halacha like Reb Shimon, the halacha follows Reb Shimon that even regular people would be allowed to smear rose oil. Because if we allow it for princes, everybody's like a prince, we can allow it to everybody. Fraktamar lememar de Rav Reb Shimon's relay. So Rav just went like Reb Shimon. Now, if you're going like Reb Shimon by the laws of Shabbos, we're assuming it's like all or nothing, like he's going with the rules of Shimon by Shabbos. Lememar de Rav Reb Shimon's relay. Does that mean that Rav subscribes to Reb Shimon's lenient rulings by the rules of Shabbos? Va'amar Reb Shimi Bar Chia mashmei de Rav. But Reb Shimi Bar Chia said name of Rav. Hai misuchraya dinazaisa, the stopper of a barrel, which was a cloth wrapped around the faucet of an earthen barrel that sealed gaps between the faucet and the barrel. Asr lahaduke b'yom tova, you are not allowed to push it into place on Yom Tov, and the Meiri says for sure not on Shabbos, which is an issue because you might squeeze out. What happens is the cloth gets full of wine. So anytime you're moving it, it's too easy to squeeze out the wine from the cloth, which would either be a subcategory of melabin, cleaning, because when you squeeze out the wine from the cloth, you're cleaning the cloth, or it's threshing, which is squeezing. So it's either a squeezing issue or a cleaning issue. So you're not allowed to push it into place on Yom Tov, right? Now, seemingly this is called a davar she'ein miskavin. You're doing one action and you're causing a malacha to happen, but your intent is not for the malacha to happen, right? Which is machlokas, because your goal is just to put the cloth into position on the barrel. It happens to be, it'll squeeze out some wine. That's a davar she'ein miskavin. It's an unintended consequence. Rabbi Yehuda says that's forbidden. Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted. So we see if Rav said you're not allowed to do it, obviously Rav does not subscribe to Rabbi Shimon's lenient rulings by Shabbos. Gemara says no. In that case, even Rabbi Shimon would agree you're not allowed to do it. Why? Because Abai and Rava both says Rabbi Shimon would agree if it's a for sure going to happen, this unintended consequence. Like when you psik ratio means if you chop off the chicken's head, is it possible it won't die? Of course it's going to die. So even Rav Shimon would agree if it's for sure going to happen, if psik ratio is forbidden. So in this case of psik ratio, therefore even Rav Shimon would agree that it's prohibited. Therefore Rav could subscribe to Rav Shimon by all these cases. Frakti Gemara. V'amr, we're not 111B1. Kufir alpha and beis. V'amr of Chia bar Ashi. Amar Rav. Baruch Chia bar Ashi said in the name of Rav. Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda that a davar she'ein miskavin, an unintentional malacha that happens, is prohibited. Rav Chanan bar Ami Amar Shmuel. Rav Chanan bar Ami is the name of Shmuel. Halacha Rabbi Shimon. Halacha is like Rabbi Shimon. Rav Chia bar Avin Mastin la Blagav. Rav Chia bar Avin taught the above machlokas between Rav and Shmuel without anybody quoting them. Rather, Rav Amar halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Rav said the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Ushmuel Amar halacha Rabbi Shimon. Shmuel says the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon. So how does Rav go like Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah to be lenient for everybody to apply as rose oil? Seemingly, Rav in general doesn't go like Rabbi Shimon's leniencies by the rules of Shabbos. Ella Amar Rava, rather Rava said, Aniva Arisha Bechavura Targim. I and the line in the group explained Rav's statement regarding rose oil. Umani, and who was the line of the group? This is an expression we use even nowadays. The Arisha Bechavura, the line of the group. Who was that? Rabbi Chia bar Avin. That was Rabbi Chia bar Avin. Halacha Rabbi Shimon v'labin tamei. Rav was saying we pass like Rabbi Shimon by the rose oil, but I don't agree to his reasoning. I agree to Rabbi Shimon that it's permitted for everybody to put on the rose oil, but I disagree with Rabbi Shimon's reasoning. What does that mean? My halacha Rabbi Shimon v'labin tamei. What does it mean? He goes. Rav says I go like Rabbi Shimon, but not for his reasoning. Ilay halacha Rabbi Shimon desharim. If it means that I go like Rabbi Shimon that allows the use of rose oil, v'labin tamei, but not for his reasoning. De'iler Rabbi Shimon savar masi. Because Rabbi Shimon holds the rose oil heals, but yet it's still permitted. Remember, if it heals, it makes it worse because it looks like you're using medicine, right? But Rav savar masi. Maybe Rav holds it permitted because he just holds that it doesn't heal, and therefore it's okay. But that's not true. But savar Rav masi. Does Rav hold that rose oil does not heal? But from the fact the Mishnah says, "B'nei malachim salchin al gabe makasen shemen bered." Princes may smear rose oil on their wounds, and implies to the Mishnah that it's healing it. You're putting on your wound it implies that it's healing it. If it wouldn't have healed it, it wouldn't even say it. So it implies that it does have healing properties. Allah, rather, halacha Reb Shimon deshari. The halacha is like Reb Shimon that it's permitted to put rose oil on the wounds, v'lav mitamei, but not for his reasoning. De'iler Reb Shimon savar alpha gav d'leshchiach shari. Reb Shimon holds that rose oil is permitted even though it's not common, which means even in a place where it's expensive, and most people don't apply rose oil, Reb Shimon still holds, since in some locations rose oil is normally put on, even for not healing purposes. So even a location where it's expensive and you only do it for medicinal purposes, it's okay. Because Reb Shimon holds if it's permitted one place, it's permitted for everybody. The Rav Savar, however, Rav holds only if rose oil is common in your location. So that means it would be normal to do it even not for medicinal purposes. That's when it's okay. But if it's not common, you're not allowed to use it. In a Rav's location, rose oil was common. Therefore, Rav told the people in his location, yes, you're allowed to use rose oil. So basically, he was saying, we go like Reb Shimon. But not really. He doesn't actually pass like Reb Shimon. He goes like Reb Shimon that he would tell people rose oil was permitted, but for a different reason. Reb Shimon held, if in some locations it's normal, so even in other locations you're allowed to use it. Rav held, no, it has to be in your locations normal, but it happens to be in Rav's location, it was a normal thing, and therefore he would tell people, you can go like Reb Shimon, that is permitted. Mazel tov, Hachanalach Shemona Shratzim, Mazel tov. Okay, new mission. Any questions so far? Okay, let's talk about the malacha of kaisher and matir, tying knots and untying knots, which are two biblical malachas. Ve'elu kisharim shechayavin aleihem. These are knots that you're biblically liable for making this knot on Shabbos. Kesher hagamolin, the kesher hasaponin, the camel driver's knot and the sailor's knots. These are real permanent knots that would be forbidden. Ukashem shuchayev al kishuran, just like you're liable for tying these knots, kachu chayev al heteran, so too you're liable for untying these knots. Okay, so it's very important to recognize there's two malachas, tying them and untying them. Rameir says, Kol kasher shu yachal atirei ba'achas miyadav, any knot that can be untied with one of his hands, ein chayadav and olav, that tells you is obviously not the same level of type of permanent knots that, and therefore you would not be liable for it. So if it's loosely enough that you can undo with one hand, even if the one who tied it intended that it should be indefinite, according to Meir, that's not called permanent. If you could, it's loose enough, you could undo with one hand. Okay. Gil wants to know where would a shoe knot fall under. Okay, let's see the Gemara, and then let's decide after that. I mean, I'll tell you, if you want bottom line halacha, the bottom line halacha is a real knot. So there's going to be a few different issues. If it's made to be permanent, which means made to stay for at least 24 hours or a few days, we'll see about that. That is one element that prohibits it. If it's something that you cannot take out with one hand, that would be an issue. The best case scenario would be making bows that you can untie with one hand and you don't intend for them to stay in for 24 hours. That's we could go through the Shabbos home, but if you want best case scenario, garbage knots is a discussion. Because if your goal, because you might, when you make a garbage knot, it could be your goal is to leave it there permanently. That could be a problem. When I do my garbage, I just make you know, like you do the first step of a knot. I don't do the actual, yeah, we'll see about bows. We'll see, because if you want practical, we'll see in the Shabbos home. Best case scenario for the garbage would be just to do the first loop, but in a way that it can easily come out, not a real knot. For your shoes, best case scenario for now would be if you just make a bow, because the bow you can take out with one hand, and your goal should not be for it to be for more than 24 hours. Let's see about this as we go through. It comes out, this is relevant for ties as well. If you make a tie, it may make a difference. Again, two questions we're going to have to ask ourselves will be, can you take it out with one hand? And was it made with intention to be for more than 24 hours or not? But we'll see Mr. Hashem about this as we go through. Okay. My kesher hagamolin v'kesher hasapanim. So what does the Mishnah mean by the camel driver's knot and the sailor's knot, which are prohibited? If we're talking about the knot that's tied through the nose ring, that connects the leash to the nose ring in the camel. The kitra, the katri is tirida, and we're talking about the knot that's tied through the ship's ring, which connects the anchoring rope to the ship's ring. Hai kasher she'enu shel kayamu. Those are not permanent knots. They're made to come in and out. We would not say that those would be permanent, would be biblical liable. Elakitra dizmama gufe rather means the knot of the nose ring itself, which is the thong is formed into the nose ring. Ude is terida gufa, and the ship's ring itself, the knot by which the thong is formed into the ship's ring, those are permanent knots, and those is biblical liability. And we'll see by knots is really three levels. There are those that are biblically liable. There are those that are rabbinically forbidden, and then we have to know which ones are totally permitted. So we always have to know which of those three levels it fits into. These cases in Mishnah are biblically liable. That's why it says chayev. Rameir Amar Kol Kasher B'chul. Rameir says any knot that you can untie with one hand, you would definitely not have at least a biblical liability for. By Rav Achadvoy Achui de Maracham, Rav Achadvoy, the brother of Maracham, inquired, Aniva l'Rameir Mahu. What would Rameir say about a bow? Okay, so time it Rameir Mishum Diyachal Atir B'Achas Miyadavu. If Rameir's reason is because you can untie the knot with one of his hands, v'hanami yachal atirai. Well, a bow can be untied with one hand, so if so, that should be okay. Odilma, perhaps time to Rameir Mishum D'lei Mahadik. Maybe Rameir's reasoning is that if you can untie with one of your hands, obviously it's not a tight knot. V'hamahadik, but then how about a tight bow? What would Rameir say about a tight bow that you can take out with one hand, but it is tight? So teku, that's unresolved. So very interesting. We have unresolved here. What would Rameir say about the case of bow, which is tight, but you can take it out with one hand? Again, we'll see more about this in practice. Again, in practice, a bow would be okay. Definitely if you made it with intent to open it up within 24 hours, and it's a bow that you can undo with one hand. Okay, yesh lecha, next Mishnah. Yesh lecha kisharin she'ein chayavan aleihen kekesher hagamalin or kekesher hasapanim. There are knots that you would not be liable, like the camel driver's knot and the sailor's knot, which means the camel driver's knot and the sailor's knot, we know you are liable. We'll have knots that don't have that type of liability. Kosharis isha miftach chaluka. A woman may tie the opening of her shumiz, bechute sivacha, and strings of a hat, vishal piskia, or of a girdle, urtsuos minol, a sandal, or straps of a shoe or a sandal, b'noidos yain b'shemen, leather canteens of wine or oil, ukederesh albasar, or a pot of meat, which is a piece of cloth sometimes tied over the top of a pot, Rashi says, in place of a lid. All these were made not to be permanent and more easily taken out, and therefore all these would not have a biblical liability. Maybe even they would be permitted. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, you're allowed to tie a rope in front of the stall of an animal so that it does not go out. This also would be okay. Let's just see the next Gemara quickly. Hagufa kasha. Seems like there's an inherent contradiction in our Mishnah. Amrit, first you told me, there are knots that you're not liable, like the camel driver's knot or the sailor's knot. Implication is you're not biblically liable for these knots. But implies, at least it's going to rabbinically forbidden, you're not liable. Implies though it's still rabbinically forbidden. Bahadr Tani, and then the next line, the Tana says in the Mishnah, a woman is allowed to tie the opening of her shumiz, which implies it's totally permitted. So is it just not biblically forbidden, but it's still rabbinically forbidden, or is it totally permitted? So Gemara says, this is what the Mishnah means. There are knots which you're not liable, as the camel driver's knot and the sailor's knot. What are these knots that you're not liable? Kitra de kachir bizmama. The knot which is tied through the nose ring, which the leash is tied to the nose ring of a camel. So this knot is sometimes left tied on the nose ring for a week or two at a time, while the movement of the camel is restricted or freed by tying or untying the other end of the leash. So these knots may be kept for a while. The kitra de kachir bezterida, and the knot which is tied through the ship's ring, chiyuvo deleka. For these, there's no biblical liability, ha'isura ika, but at least they would be rabbinically forbidden. And then there are others that are totally permitted. What is that? A woman's allowed to tie the opening of her shumis. So it comes out that there's 3 levels we see over here. There's those that are really tied well and they're permanent. And those would be biblically liable. Then there is a lower level of liability, which is rabbinically forbidden. And then there are those that are totally permitted. Obviously, we'll have to see as we go along, how do we figure out which level each type of knot fits into? Any questions?
No.
All right, give me a minute. I just have to grab the Shabbos kitchen. Give me a second. I'll be back in a minute. Let me just grab the safer. Second, everybody.
Gary,
Yeah,
my problem was that I was connected to the wrong network.
yeah, I figured.
I connected to Xfinity instead of my network.
Well, forget that network on your computer. Just go there and tell it and forget it. And it
I
won't
know,
again.
but I had a full signal. Didn't
Yeah.
matter.
Okay. All right, we have the Shabbos kitchen over here. Page 38 in the Shabbos kitchen. I think we should have a test on this. Who here wants to have a test on this afterwards? Michael says no.
Pop
Bill
quiz.
says yes. You want Rabbi Slatus to give an oral test or do you want a written test?
Open book?
All right, we'll have to. You may be tested. We'll see.
No.
Alan says no. Michael says no. Gil says yes. Okay. Huh?
I say no.
Michael. Michael wants to know if he can bring Cheryl along for the test. Okay. All right. Seasoning dry foods like hot meat or thick cholent. Because remember, we said liquids have a leniency when you go from one vessel to the next, that the walls of the next vessel cool them off. So therefore, we said a first vessel, Kli Rishon, has the ability to cook. The Kli Sheni, the second vessel, has the ability to cook, though with 4 different categories of leniencies. And then we said the Kli Shlishi, the third vessel, by liquids, everything is allowed to be put into there, even if it's hot, except for 2 exceptions that we had to that rule. But in general, Kli Shlishi, you don't have to be concerned about. Solids are a little different because they don't necessarily cool off. So if you take a hot potato and you go from vessel to vessel, it can be fully hot, even in the 10th vessel. So we said hot solids, there's going to be a machlokas about how do you view them. Do you view that they get cooled off as they go from plate to plate, or you don't? So seasoning dry foods like hot meat or thick cholent. Pre-cooked seasoning, which is always going to be better off for us, like salt or sugar, may be used on dry foods, even in a Kli Rishon. Because this is a concept that once they're cooked already, you don't have to be concerned about them being cooked again. Now, obviously, we're not talking about that the first vessel is on the fire, because when something's on the fire, you can't do nothing to it. But once it's off the fire, you can put solid, dry seasoning that's already been cooked. You can put it into your potato or your thick cholent, that which has the status of a solid. Uncooked spices. And again, I don't know the status of black pepper. I think Andy was supposed to find out for us. I'm not sure I have to find out about this.
Black pepper is cooked for about 15 seconds.
So we have to find out if that counts as cooked or not. Meaning there's another question, what's called cooked? So we have to try to find out about that, if that has a status of cooked or not. Dried, is it through heat? No, it has to, Michael wants to know if dried means cooked. So I'm saying it depends how. It has to be through a heating process.
It's cooked in, as far as I read, it's cooked in water.
Yeah, so again, these are big discussions, what's called cooked. So we'll have to find out about the black pepper question. Uncooked spices should never be used on solid foods in any vessel until they cool biyad yad to let it go. So if you want to take a spice that you don't know for sure if it's cooked already, you cannot put that into a hot potato or your cholent, which is a status of a solid. Now, certain cholents are more of like a liquid and certain cholents are more of a solid. Uncooked spice in a solid, if that solid is 110 degrees, you cannot do that. Okay?
No chives.
What?
No chives.
So those are not cooked?
No, they're not.
Okay, so chives. So to put chives into a liquid would be okay in a kli shlishi, right? To put chives into a solid would only be okay if the solid is below 110 degrees. Okay? Make sense?
Yep.
Again, this sounds confusing, but as we go through this, it's the same exact concepts that come up over and over again. We just have to get used to them. So if you're confused, don't worry about it. But again, as we go through all these cases, it's the same concepts. Condiments. How about liquid condiments, okay? So let's say I want to put my ketchup. What do I need to know about adding my ketchup? What vessel can I add my ketchup to? Liquid condiments which were cooked during processing. For example, ketchup and mustard are cooked during processing. Am I allowed to add my ketchup and mustard to my kli rishon? So again, this is my question for rabbis. Ready for this one? My ketchup and mustard are cooked during processing. I have soup or I have a liquid cholent. So I want to know about putting them into liquid. So I have my chicken soup and I want to pour my ketchup into my pot of chicken soup that's not on the fire. Yes or no? Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, I think. Well, people put that hot sauce.
So Carrie says yes, and Michael says no. Yes. Any other? So you all say in a kli rishon.
I say no.
Sid says no. Gil says no. We have a machlokas over here. All right, let's battle it out. Let's go. Somebody prove somebody else right or wrong. Let's go. Sid, why do you say no?
It's a liquid. You can have bishul off a bishul in a liquid.
Which means, Steve, you're saying you could or you can't?
You should not.
Steve says no. Okay, good. So again, the reason here would be, the answer would be no, you cannot put your ketchup into a kli rishon. And the reason is, as Steve said, because a liquid that got heated up and cooked, if it got cooled off again, there's a prohibition to heat it up again, right? Remember we've seen that? So your ketchup is a liquid that was heated up, and now it cooled off, right? Your ketchup's not hot now, it's cooled off. If you put it into kli rishon, you cooked your liquid. You just heated up a liquid again. That is a problem. How about a kli sheni? Can I put my ketchup into a kli sheni?
That's what we said earlier. You
Gil
could.
says yes, because it's less than 110 degrees. But Gil, my question is, let's say my kli sheni is more than 110 degrees. Whoa. Gil says if your second vessel is more than 100 degrees, 10 degrees, it's not.
Like saying your ladle's boiling hot and you put it in. That's not considered a kli sheni.
Gil comes up with a new novelty that if your kli sheni, your second vessel, is more than 110 degrees, it has the status of a first vessel. Does anybody want to argue with him?
No, that's not true. No,
I don't
it's
think
not true.
So Steve, Carrie, and Michael all argue.
I
on
don't
it.
agree with Gil.
So no, we've seen, again, this is the concept we're saying. When you pour from a kli rishon to, Michael and Gil are currently arguing it out, whether this second vessel has the status of it.
It's like when you take wood from an herb, you make coffee on Shabbos. The second cup from the herb to a cup, and then you pour it in your cup to make it instant coffee.
Correct. According to Gil,
If you do that one after the other straight away, what Gil is saying, you can't do that.
Gil, how do you make coffee on Shabbos?
I'm talking about the ladle.
Forget about the ladle. Don't worry about the ladle. I have a second vessel. Ladle is a second question, right?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm referring more to the hot ladle.
No, but if you take the ladle, for sure, listen, if you have a pot of soup and you ladle out, forget about the status of the ladle. By the time it gets to your bowl in front of you, it's either a kli sheni or a kli shlishi. Even, that's a kli rishon. You take your ladle, it's a kli rishon if you leave it in for a while. And then you pour it into your bowl in front of you. What's the status of that bowl? Well, let's say it's 200 degrees.
still include duration.
So is that called, so that bowl in front of you, that bowl in front of you, is that called a kli rishon or kli sheni?
I mean, technically it's considered a kli sheni, but there's no change in element.
So Gil's asking, which is a valid question. Gil wants to know, listen, let's get this very clear. There is no doubt about it that the second vessel that it's in has a status of a kli sheni. Gil wants to know, hold on, it's still Yad Soleh, it's still 110 degrees. And it's a valid point which all the commentaries struggle with. If it's still piping hot, why is it called a kli sheni? It still has the ability to cook. And the answer is, this is the answer, even though it might be hard to understand, the answer is I don't care about measuring the temperature in the bowl. The bottom line is, once it's been removed from the pot that it was cooked into a second pot, it doesn't have, within the realm of halacha of cooking, it doesn't have the same potency to cook, even if it's piping hot. Now, I will say, by the way, just to be on the record, just a record, there are those who argue and say, like Gil, that if it's yad nichvis boy, which don't worry about, this might be confusing. Some say if it's so hot that your hand will actually get burnt by sticking your hand in. Some say you cannot apply the leniencies of kli sheni, but don't worry about that because that's an added stringency. All we have to know about is once it goes from that first pot to the second bowl, that bowl is a kli sheni. Kli sheni still has the ability to cook, but there are 4 leniencies, right? One of the leniencies of a kli sheni was that if you have a liquid that was cooked once already, and then it was cooled down, which we said you're not allowed to recook. But since at the end of the day, this liquid was cooked once, in a kli sheni, you're allowed to heat it up. The relevance would be to the case of the ketchup. Ketchup is a liquid that was heated up, and then it was cooled down. So we say, as Steve said, you're not allowed to recook that. But since it was cooked once, it now has a leniency, then in kli sheni, you're allowed to do it. Okay, so basically a liquid, one second, so just to get this clear, I know this is confusing, so if you're confused, don't worry about it. We'll go over these concepts till they're coming out of our ears. So again, a liquid that was never cooked, you're not allowed to put that into kli sheni because that will cook it. A liquid that was cooked, and then it cooled down, even though you're not allowed to recook it, but that was one of the 4 leniencies that kli sheni has, that you're allowed to put that into kli sheni. So bottom line, practical halacha would be, ketchup and mustard, which are liquids that were cooked and then cooled down, you would not be allowed to put them in a kli rishon, but you would be allowed to put them in a kli sheni. Let me just read this note here. Condiments, so F over here. Liquid condiments which were cooked during processing, like ketchup and mustard, may not be added to kli rishon. However, they may be used when the food is transferred to kli sheni. Yes, Steve.
The kli rishon, while it's on the fire, is a kli rishon. That's the definition of a kli rishon. What about when you take it off the fire? Is it still considered a kli rishon, or does it then drop down to something else?
Excellent question. Steve wants to know and again, if anybody's confused, please don't worry about it. We'll go over the concepts. Eventually, we'll get them straight. They're confusing. I know that. Steve wants to know if you take your chicken soup and you heat it up on the fire, and now you take this pot and it's off the fire. Is that called a kli rishon or a kli sheni? The answer is that is called a kli rishon, because the pot that came in contact with the fire maintains the status of a kli rishon, even if it's off the fire. The reason is, if you just want to think about the logic, the leniency of a kli sheni is because the walls are cool, because they never came in contact. So we say when you pour from one to the next, you have the concept of the walls of the pot cool it off. You don't have that in this pot over here, because this pot actually came in contact with the source of fire. So if the pot itself that the food was heated up in will always maintain the status of a kli rishon.
So
The
how,
only time you're allowed to cook in that pot is if it's below 110 degrees. That's the only time it loses the status of a kli rishon, because it loses the power to cook.
oh, so an hour later, it's now,
What?
so an hour later, when it's off the fire for an hour, it's still a kli rishon, but it's got a different sort of status.
Are you talking about it's below 110 degrees or above 110
Yes,
degrees?
below 110.
If you have a pot of chicken soup that was heated up on the fire and it cools below 110 degrees, it still is called a kli rishon. But anytime your temperature is below 110 degrees, there's a separate exception. You don't have to worry about it. There's no cooking will take place there. So it's
So
like a left field exemption. Anytime you're below 110 degrees, this entire book is a non-starter because there's no cooking that will take place under 110 degrees.
Is that what is going on when we have the cholent pot at the kiddush and you can then add barbecue sauce to it?
The cholent pot, the kiddush should be 110 degrees.
So how are we able to add stuff to it?
Is the stuff, well, I mean, let's just start with a starting point. I don't know if you're allowed, let's go through the case. Are you adding something that's cooked or not cooked? You're adding barbecue sauce, right?
Yes.
So is that cooked or not cooked?
It's been cooked.
I assume it's cooked. So a cooked item in a kli sheni would be okay, right? So to
Yeah, but
add
it's
the
not-
barbecue sauce to the pot, so I don't know if you would not be like, if it's still 110 degrees, you cannot add the barbecue sauce to the pot of cholent that it's being served in, meaning that was on the fire. But if you then spoon it into your bowl,
Okay, that's a shame.
then that's a klisheni. Unless you have things that are like hot potatoes. We'll see about that. We'll have to see about that if it has the status of a solid, if you're allowed to add a cooked sauce onto a solid slab. We'll have to see about that. But definitely if it's a liquid in a klisheni, you're allowed to add a liquid that was cooked already. So that's the reason why that's okay. That makes sense?
Yes.
Michael,
Yeah.
Michael had a question. Michael, what was your question? Yeah.
And to things that what you were saying, and you put the ladle in the soup, and the ladle's been sitting in the soup, why isn't that automatically become part of the pot?
So Michael wants to know if you have a ladle that you keep in your soup for a while, why doesn't that become part of the pot? And the answer is it does. If you keep your ladle in for a while, the ladle takes on the status of a kli rishon. No, but I was talking about the bowl in front of your plate.
No, I understand that, but I think they want to know that.
Right, meaning like this. The bowl that's sitting, if you,
It's a shame.
If-
You can't use that.
so again, we'll see more about the ladle, but basically, if you take a ladle out from the pot of soup and you ladle into the bowl in front of you. So this is a common question. The bowl of chicken soup in front of my seat, is that a klisheni or a klishlishi? That's the question. The answer is, if you kept the ladle in for a while, there's no question. The ladle then takes on the status of the kli rishon, and that means your bowl is a klisheni, which would mean you're not allowed to add uncooked spices to it, right? If the ladle was in and out, there it depends regarding what you want to add to your bowl. For some things, your bowl is called a klisheni. For some things, your bowl is called a klishlishi, as we'll see more about, because that's an iffy situation. All right, are we good? Carrie, you had a question?
Yes.
Yes.
We Rishon. You got the pot. You take it off. It cools down to 50 degrees. Can you put ketchup in there? You're not cooking it.
Shown that's 50 degrees.
It's 50 degrees now because you've taken it off. It's the
Whatever,
original pot.
if you are adding if everything in that utensil is below 110 degrees, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
As long as it's not on the fire anymore. On the fire, obviously you can't deal with it, but if it's off the fire and it's cooled clearly below 110 degrees, as long as everything in the pot is below 110 degrees, you can add whatever you want to that pot. That's not a problem because there's no cooking will take place. Cooking only starts once you hit 110 degrees. Below 110 degrees, you don't have to worry about cooking issues.
Right. Okay.
All right? All right, shkach, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, and thank you, everybody.